And everyone's world is different. Everyone has a struggle, a story to tell. So it's not like a woe is me type thing.
What's going on, world? And it's an exciting time, a very interesting time to be in the world of real estate. And as the MC of the IOI pitch battle, I have the great honor to interview 12 of the participants in the actual pitch battle. Now, let me tell you, these 12 participants, they had to put in a lot of work to be selected because there were over 100 different applicants. And here's what I love about being the MC and also a podcaster. I feel like I'm in these personal consultations every time that I have the honor to interview someone. And so one, I want to congratulate Brian Young for being selected with Home Lending Pal to be one of the 12 participants in the IOI Summit Pitch Battle. What's going on, Brian?
Nothing much. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be here. Now, Brian, when we start thinking about the tool that you're going to talk about at the IOI Summit, can you tell me more about the Home Lending Pal? I think I got an idea, but that could be dangerous. So, so give it to me.
Yeah. So we have partnered. We've been working with Credit.org. They are one of the largest national HUD-approved housing counselors in the country. And our goal is to be able to provide some of their free credit counseling, free debt counseling, free credit repair services to underserved communities through our platform. And that's on the consumer-facing side. So as a consumer, you enroll into the system. We're partnering with different, national banks. I do sit on the board of a bank called Quantic Bank, which is a top CDFI, or basically think of it as a top bank in the country that services underserved communities. And what our goal is on the back end, we have a platform that's known as Pathfinder, which is basically an AI agent that has the ability to translate into your native language. Right now, we're doing Spanish, French, and English. We're looking at Arabic for Muslims to make it easier for a consumer that is interested in understanding, like, can I take advantage of a down payment assistance program? Can I leverage a closing cost grant, which a lot of the banks get anywhere from $5,000, $10,000 towards these initiatives to be able to determine if you're eligible. But we're also holding the banks accountable from a Community Reinvestment Act or CRA perspective. There's a certain amount of loans or a certain percentage of income that is supposed to go to underserved communities. This isn't just African Americans, it's Latino, it's Muslims, it's Asians, it's Pacific Islanders. And so what our system does is it makes it easier for both the consumer and the loan officer, even if you're not a deep industry expert into these different products, to basically understand in real time as you're going through the application process, one, will this get me approved? And two, will it help me be able to buy the home of my dreams in real time?
Let me just tell you something, Brian. We have not spoken to each other on any of our previous prep calls.
Yeah.
But when I tell you I'm 100% already in love, and we're gonna break these down one at a time. Okay.
Break them down one
I'm gonna give you 3 reasons today why I am in love. Okay, so we're gonna just do them one at a time. The first reason I am in love, because I don't know if you are aware of the new initiative 3 by 30. 3 by 30 is a collaboration of the Urban League, the National Association of Realtors, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, that we want to net 3 million new African American home buyers by the year 2030. And they have 9 different pillars. And instantly, I'm thinking, when we think about African Americans, right? And I can say this as an African American, and I don't want people to make assumptions about Black folks. Because we haven't always had access, and because our home ownership rates have not grown since the implementation of fair housing, right? We often don't know what we don't know, especially when it comes to credit. And so having access to a free credit tool to be able to prepare, and I even want to say prepare them earlier rather than later. One of the things, my oldest son, Skylar, he's 28. He's a second generation realtor, went to Howard after he attended, I would say, one of the top Chicago high school that is not a selective enrollment school, Kenwood. And I used to go to Kenwood to do a program. for the students in his program. And we would talk about how much money you have to earn and what is your debt to income ratio to live in the house in which you desire. And I would pick a house. Where did you see this house? Oh, I saw this house in Lincoln Park. Oh, that's a $2 million house. So you got to have a job, right? And yeah, you can afford a house at 2.5 times your gross annual income. So if you're looking at this house, right, and it's $2 million, then what you going to do to earn $750,000?
Right.
So having access to the credit card, what are you seeing when people have the resources and the education to increase the likelihood of buying?
Yeah. We've helped over 31,000 people over the last 2.5 years with this process. And I think that is one of the big things that kind of has drawn the government to us. To your point, that racial wealth gap is now wider than it was 60 years ago when segregation was legal. And so, and to even go a step beyond that, you saw in 2022, banks allocated about 24.5 billion towards initiatives like this. They call them community lending initiatives. Mm-hmm. Yet you also saw in that same year, the banks got fined, I think, about 10.2 billion in fines for these infractions against these communities where they're not doing enough to try to, raise awareness and drive that educational aspect. We've also, just within our process, have been able to reduce declinations by 30%. And so when you look at kind of that 80-20 rule, you see that, African Americans, minorities are usually the highest decline segment when it comes to, applying for home ownership loans. And so it's like, in our perspective, if we integrate our system into a loan origination system of the financial institution, and we're able to then allocate these funds they have to be allocated anyway to be able to showcase, how that will improve the approval rates. It's a win-win for everyone, and it's a trackable process that allows growth to scale. So I say that to say that, it is working. I don't think it's just education. I think there is an element of technology, but you also have to think of, to your point and where you were kind of going, is that there's been so much harm and detriment done to these underserved communities that you can't just say, oh, well, we've given them the resources we've given, because equal access does not mean equal opportunity. Just because we know it's there. And in many cases, we don't even know it's there. We don't even know if it's a real thing or not. And so, just finding ways to drive engagement, to drive awareness. And we've even made it where banks can even take their declined borrowers and refer them to our system to give greater understanding as to why am I getting declined. So your point, the average person, going back to your example, if I want to buy a $2 million home, I don't realize that I need $750,000 to really be in that home and be comfortable. I think, oh, well, $2 million home, there's a, hypothetically speaking, a $10,000 a month mortgage payment. I make $15,000 a month. I should be able to get that home. That's not how it works. And so, doing things like that help people understand that it's not just getting in the home. It's not the initial underwriting process. It's being able to stay in that home after you purchase it, which is the big thing that impacts our community. And again, that's where, when we're partnering with credit.org, they've been doing this for 50 years in terms of the credit side, bringing an experienced group like that to the table to, and it's their services they've already been providing, like to give those services to the general consumer. Just, it makes sense for everyone. And I think it's something different. It's a new approach, but, we can't keep, as an industry, we can't keep doing the same things over, seeing this gap increase and then wondering why isn't it working. That's literally the definition of insanity. Like, we must try something different. We must either change our mindset as just a mortgage, a real estate industry in general, to go from being so transactional to being more relationship based, especially as we see, we went from historically low interest rates to historically high interest rates. And now we're going back to, honestly, what is generally normal within the mortgage market. But because we were so low previously, everyone thinks, oh, well, home ownership is impossible to me. And so it's, how do you get these people that are qualified sitting on the sideline to even start engaging in the conversation? I mean, I know there's still a whole argument that could be made about inventory and homes and stuff like that. But, you got to start somewhere. You can't just keep, referencing the same points and not trying something different, basically, is my perspective on it.
I 100% agree. Now I'm going to tell you number two.
Okay.
We talked about the Arabic community, right?
Yeah.
And I really want to talk about the Muslim buyer and their approach to debt. So there is an organization out of Washington, D.C. that has developed a unique product that meets the Muslim guidelines. I would like to introduce you to their founder, because when we were recently in Washington, D.C. for realtor legislative meetings, as we were advocating for veterans to be able to now leverage having a buyer representative, a signed buyer representative, and the ability to compensate them, they wanted me to come to their headquarters. So with the language translation of leveraging artificial intelligence, one, I believe now that your product would definitely work with these unique lending products based on personal and or religious beliefs. That would be first. The next thing that I'm thinking about inside of the same realm is the fact that when we start looking at the United States, Spanish is the second most spoken language in our country. But when we start looking at the West Coast, taking into consideration California, Utah, Nebraska, I'm going to come to the center, right? Oklahoma, Texas, right? That there are numerous cities there where Spanish will become the number one spoken language.
Yeah.
And even if you're not bilingual, we're in an industry where from the real estate practitioner side, we still can do referral transactions, okay? So I'm looking at access to the information because of one little simple thing, right? Leveraging artificial intelligence to translate to all potential buyers. And then now, even if we looked at ChatGPT, you can actually leverage it for me to have a conversation. It converts to Spanish for you, but then it converts back to English for me.
Yep.
So when you think about, let's go with the Latino Hispanic home buyer, right? What opportunities exist for them? Because it's not just race, right?
Yeah.
We're also thinking about, we have migrants, right, who come, they're legal, they have the opportunity to work, and they have the opportunity to buy real estate. How is this tool being leveraged for anyone where English is not their first language?
Yeah, especially when looking at the Latino community, I have been personally meeting with a tutor 3 times a week the last 5-6 months, probably longer than that now, to start the process of understanding their world. Their world is so much different and everyone's world is different. Everyone has a struggle, a story to tell. So it's not like a woe is me type thing, but the numbers tell us that 2 things. One, to your point, the Latino buying demographic is supposed to be the largest by 2030 or 2032, I believe. And 2, less than 3% of this industry, from the realtor and the lender side, is minorities or underserved communities. So you have this large buying demographic that is interested in buying, but we've also noticed that unlike the typical buyer, when you look at just traditional mortgages, most of them have a lot of assets in terms of cash. They don't actually have like a lot of credit score or credit history. I could say that's one of their biggest kind of challenges is overcoming the credit history battle. And again, it's because they don't really understand how credit works here in the United States because they don't have credit in Mexico or other Latino countries. So one of the things that we're doing, to your point, is like, obviously we've translated the app into Spanish. It interacts with them in their native language. So they don't have to, and it does it automatically based on the device. So it's not like they have to select it or do anything like that. But it also engages with them. And then to your point, we're also moving into on the loan officer side and the realtor side, and then translate that back into kind of what are their challenges, what are they looking at. And the cool part about the system is that we collect so much data, so much insight. We're able to see based on their interaction, where are they looking. To your point, we know that California is a big place, obviously Texas, and then New York, Florida, especially Southern Florida, is a big area where you get a lot of these borrowers that have, large cash assets, but they just don't have the credit history, but they still want to buy. And so being able to connect the dots there and to be able to showcase that to the realtor, to the lender, to the consumer, even from their perspective, makes it a lot easier in the transaction, a lot faster. And again, I know there's a lot that we still need to do. We're far a long way in terms of where AI is. When we talk about artificial general intelligence, we're a long way from, AI being completely human. But I think this was a good step to begin to close that gap and make it easier for, two individuals that one speaks Spanish, one doesn't, to engage and interact together.
So I love that. That was number 2. Number 3. We call it a strategic alliance at the Chicago Association of Realtors. where we're working with all of the different trade organizations and all the minority trade organizations, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, and then ARIA, so your Asian community, plus the LGBTQ, but we don't have necessarily a language
Yeah.
barrier, and then also VA rep. With that being said, because the two translates, then when I'm thinking with you being coming to pitch in the IOI Summit, is then also building that relationship, one, because of race, but then also because of language with ARIA and with the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. They'll actually, a lot of them and their national presidents will be in attendance at the IOI Summit because every last one of us have our own initiatives. We all do our own reporting on the impact of home ownership to each of our respective communities, right?
Mhm.
So I'm thinking about how to leverage this with the different strategic alliances.
Yes.
Another thing that stood out to me about 6 weeks ago, good friend of mine, Bill Flagg, he is in central New Jersey, and he had his DEI summit for the state of New Jersey, and New York did a collaboration, but it occurred in New Jersey. And his good friend is the Sunda Duckett. The Sunda is one of four African American female CEOs in Fortune 500, but I believe the organization she's with is getting ready to go into the Fortune 100. One thing that she talked about was her father and how her father worked the same job for decades. And he never invested in his 401k. He knew it existed, but he didn't understand its financial impact to him until his daughter told him about the financial impact, like a decade before he was going to retire. So even though people might know about it, doesn't mean that anyone has taken the time to educate them about that true impact to longevity. And one thing that I can say right now, because I just turned 54, is that oftentimes we talk about saving money for retiring. And we look at it as the day in which you can stop working. But one thing I will say, aging is expensive, or better yet, aging gracefully is expensive. And I get to see its impact firsthand, right? So it's not for me. I likely won't retire. My husband will retire. But when I say that, I'm talking about the fact that I wear progressive lenses, right? So now my glasses cost 2 times more than they did when I was younger because the lens cost sometimes as much, if not more, than the frame. When I look at my teeth, right? As we age, we start grinding our teeth and our teeth shift. I've never worn braces, but I sleep every single night in Invisalign so that my teeth won't spread as I get older, right? It was a time that I could just put lotion on my face. Now I have to put an under eye cream, a retinol, SPF. Oh, not 30. It had to be a higher level, right? So all of this takes money, and real estate still is the number one tool for creating long-term
Yes.
wealth in our country. And it's kind of, it saddens me when people want to be selfish, right? With something that exists in abundance. Because here's the thing. If you allow me to accumulate wealth, then the likelihood is I'm going to educate my children to not be the person trying to steal and rob from you, right?
Yes.
No one is looking at it that way. What do you believe is necessary in order to have a shift in mindset around ownership for people in underserved communities?
One, you've aged gracefully, and I need your skincare
Thank you.
routine. But it was. I saw a study or a use case that said that specifically in underserved communities, when the mother has the home ownership or a stable learning environment, the impact that it makes on the future generations. And hearing you say that point, it kind of like it was one of the big reasons that we made this big pivot in August of last year, in which we basically made where the product itself can be private labeled or branded to an urban league or in this case to a credit.org, where it looks like it's coming from them, but we're licensing the technology. Obviously, we make our money from the lenders, and then we actually started revenue sharing with them. Our goal was to become a B Corp. So we actually started giving our nonprofit partners revenue share for whatever that licensing deal was for us. And usually our deals are anywhere from 1 to 3 year commitments. Usually it's around 2 or 3 for most financial institutions. But I bring that up because what we were realizing is that it isn't just the educational aspect. There's also the trust aspect. And to your point, like most people don't understand how wealth or how wealth is created through real estate, but they also want to know like, hey, this is someone that I know that I trust that is giving this to me. Like they're not going to do wrong by me. So even though Home Lending Pal has started to build up this kind of this brand recognition, this like, hey, we are trying to do the right thing for everyone, it became a lot easier to insert ourselves into these communities where we basically private labeled or white labeled our tool as a nonprofit that was already doing this work anyway. So what does the nonprofit get out of that? Well, they get greater pipeline visibility. They get greater scalability with AI agents to be able to service more people. Usually one of the big concerns for the financial institutions is that, oh, well, HUD counseling services, there's a bottleneck. There's only so many nonprofits. They're undercapitalized. This gives us the ability to scale that, where then we can actually see what is the pipeline impact of this work. If I take Brian and Brian is at a 580 when I meet him, I enroll him into these credit repair services. How long does it take for Brian to get to a point where he will be qualified for us to do a loan? And what we saw is that on average, it was about 4 months, 4 to 5 months. However, then there became the issue of Brian not knowing that, I'm looking at Cardi B and everyone else. And so I fall in love with that $2 million house. And I don't realize that most people don't start with their grand finalized house. They start with the starter home that is within their means. They take that, they flip that, they do stuff with it to make more money from it. So again, it's more so creating like our ultimate goal and my ultimate vision for this product is really to create a community, a safe space for people that want to try to build this wealth, for people that want to understand the right things to do can come in, they can download the app, they can either, work directly with us or our partners and understand like what makes the most sense for me and have something that scans my financial situation to understand, okay, well, when is this actually possible? I can't tell you how many people that I've met that says, oh, well, I want to buy a house within 2 years. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing right now? Well, I'm not ready to buy right now. I'm going to wait until I'm a little bit closer to ready to buy. Well, that's not how it works. You need to actually start working now. So kind of again, to your point, changing that mindset was one of the biggest things that we're trying to work on. And I think it literally takes a village, and I think there's a lot of players within the space that are already working on that product. And I think, for the first time in, I won't say history, but it seems like a long time, AI, chat GPT, like there's all these different technology tools that give us the opportunity, the pathway to make a significant impact in this work, while also driving a lot of revenue for the financial institution. Because whether we want to say it or not, if discrimination and items like that are technically a feeling, like you feel like you've been discriminated against, there's no kind of hardline objective state that says like, hey, you've been discriminated, relatively speaking. So if you and I go and say like, hey, we're being discriminated against because, we are African Americans, and someone that is not says, oh, well, no, you're not being discriminated against. No, here are things like those are arguments that you can make because, again, it's a feeling. But when data is shown, if you have the ability to take all this data and to make it better, it makes it much harder to say these type of things. So that's my ultimate goal, is to be able to show that, that the data is there, the intent is there. Even if you get, right now we have about 200,000 people within our system. And put that into perspective, we've only raised over 4 or 5 years about $4.9 million. Our closest competitor has raised over $40 million. And we have more than 160,000 more registered users than they have. So it shows you that there is an intent. Like, it's not to say that, underserved communities don't want to buy homes. It's that we need to understand how, we need to understand why we're buying, and we need to understand the different market dynamics of when it makes sense to buy and what we should do with those different purchases that we're making.
So a couple of things. One, because now I got another reason, right? But I'm going to say this. When we take a look, earlier you mentioned the 31,000 people that you've helped. actually, if we were to translate those numbers, that means that your tool could help the National Association of Realtors and Real Estate Brokers, right, with at least 10% hitting those potential numbers, right? And that's not even being aggressive. So between 10 to 15%, just leveraging this one tool. When you came with private label, I'm going to tell you what came to mind. Right now, as we navigate the NAR settlement agreement, and buyer agents need to have signed buyer representation agreements, and I'm always concentrating on a solution, not on a problem. Like I know we have problems, right? It's not what I'm going to talk about. One, because I believe in the law of attraction. So I believe if I focus on solutions, solutions shall come to me.
Yep.
With that being said, one of the solutions is what's called an EAH, an employer assisted housing program, where real estate professionals with a home counseling, nonprofit home counseling agency and a lender can go into any company and set up an employer assisted housing program where that employee is going to give, where that employer is going to give their employees either down payment assistance, closing cost credit that the organization can do in the form of a forgivable rent. Okay. And the reason that they do this is because it has shown that they have it reduced their training cost over time. And if you're trying to attract talent, let's say tech talent, and it's outside of, Austin, Texas, Silicon Valley, you have to give them some type of initiative to come and to maintain them there. So we have the EAH. So when I was at the National Association of Real Estate Brokers conference last week, I said, do you all realize that you have your own inside of the organization housing counseling agency called NID? What I would like to see is how could the National Association of Real Estate Brokers do a private label with you for their NID program? For one thing, thinking about the translation to Spanish. So I'm on the south side of the city of Chicago. I don't know if I said this, but Chicago is probably the largest, most segregated city. Yes. Are there cities more segregated than us? Yes. Are they as big as the city of Chicago? No. So in Chicago, we have straight up lines in the sand. So I was born and raised in a community called Inglewood. And if you look at the news, Inglewood is what you see on the news. It's about that life, right? Well, what I've noticed now going into Inglewood and different areas on the southwest side of the city of Chicago, they're no longer predominantly African American. They're now transitioning to being a more Hispanic community. Well, I'm at an open house and I'm seeing that my son's open house a couple of weeks ago, 75% of the people who showed up were Hispanic. Historically, only Blacks were buying in these communities. And instantly, we got to pull out mobile devices because we need to translate. Like, one, do you have a real estate agent? No, they're by themselves. Do you want me to walk with you through the property? No, I walk by myself, right? And so they need to private label this, especially if the different strategic organizations have their own counseling agency. They could private label the home lending pal. We didn't say it a whole lot, right? I can keep going, but I'm not going to keep going today, right? One, I am elated. Let me just be clear, elated that you were selected to present because you are like a solution. And you can tell I think you're a solution, right? Because I just came up with 10 different ways, right? I'm like, okay, you can do it this way. You can do it this way. Oops, we can take care of this, right? Brian, how do people work with you? How do different organizations come to private label with you? Tell them how to connect.
Yeah, so you can find me or email me at byoung@homelendingpal.com. We do have our website, homelendingpal.com, which you can go visit. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, all of the typical social networks. But the biggest thing is just shoot me an email. I mean, we are looking for partners. We are looking for groups and advocates that want to support this business. I think we are just now getting to a point where hopefully investors will continue to support us as well. One part that I did mention is that we've just recently released a feature that also has the ability to scan your current database as well as, different zip codes or census tracts like Southside Chicago to analyze behavioral insights to determine, the number of individuals that, the solution will be able to impact for you should you want to, allocate a budget to it. So we do have that ability to forecast that and to give, guidelines as to, what is the return on investment for, committing to this technology, which I think is a really huge impact. So, again, be young at homelendingpal.com. More than happy to answer questions and, give you more insight from there.
Well, Brian, congratulations. I look forward to meeting you. I'm going to introduce you to a lot of people when you get to Chicago. And we'll reach out before then because you are definitely a solution to helping us get to 3 by 30, which is a huge initiative, a huge undertaking. But it's not just about race. It is also about language. It is about religious beliefs around lending. And so we want to be a resource to you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.